What's up guys, and welcome to another video, and today we're going to discuss the upcoming Hall of Heroes unit, the Light Brownie Magician, also known as Gemini. And I do actually have one, so I mean it's a bit bad for me since I already have one, but I feel it's a good HOH. So I guess to start off, is it worth farming? I think it is worth farming, and I'll go through the reasons with you. So first off, let's look at his skills, right? So actually, from Awakening he gets a speed lead. This speed lead is universal, and that's really good because the only farmable monster at the moment that has a speed lead is Beretta, and Beretta is not very useful in like defense situations. So you wouldn't really want to put him on Guild Wars defense or arena defense because he doesn't really offer much to a PvP team, right? But Gemini does provide good PvP utility, so he can be like a speed lead for your team, right? So that he gets that from Awakening, which I haven't done yet. I don't have enough mid essence. Okay, so now the main skill that he's known for is this passive, right? So this passive increases the attack power by 50% if his HP is lower than the enemy's HP, like when he attacks. I haven't really seen how much damage he actually does with this, but the other like main part of this passive is that you look at the second part of it. He also removes one beneficial effect on the enemy if they have less beneficial effects than if you have less beneficial effects than the opponent does. Okay, so you wouldn't just run him on a will, right? You probably run him with like a very fast set. I think most people run him with Despair, and run him with an attack bar booster, right? So after the attack bar booster moves, Gemini should move after that. He won't have a will rune, so if opponents have will runes, then he can remove the will runes, alright, because of this passive. And this passive will work with both of his attacks, right? So his second skill, Fly. This is similar to some of the other brownies you might have seen before or used. So this one, it attacks all enemies, right? And it's a crushing hit, so so you won't glance, right? No matter what attribute they are. It's a bit irrelevant since he's already a light unit. This is more applies to other brownies, the elemental brownies. Alright, so because he's attacking all units with this, he'll also remove one beneficial effect on the opponent for each unit. Okay, as long as his HP is lower. So generally the way you build him is try not to give him too much HP. You can just give him attacker substats instead, so that I guess because the passive gives you attack power, you may as well try to just give him a bit of extra damage, right? Because if you give him too much HP, then he might not remove the will runes. So that's sort of the main purpose for him to do, right? Also, after he removes the will runes, he can also has a chance to stun if you can put him on Despair. So Despair is generally very it's like the recommended sort of build for him. But if you can't make him fast enough with Despair, you can just give him any set you want, Swift or just like a bunch of Aura runes as well will work. Avoid giving him shield runes though, because it will give him a beneficial effect. So if he's got a beneficial effect and the opponent does as well, then he won't. I believe he won't remove any buffs, right? And his first ability is the standard Brownie ability, which is Run, and this has a chance to proc an additional turn every time he attacks. So that's very nice with his passive. So like potentially, if they have like multiple buffs, he can gain extra turns and keep removing stuff off other or like whatever target you want to remove it from, right? And of course, the more times he moves with this, the more chances he can Despair stun as well. So so Despair works pretty well with his whole kit, and his passive obviously works very well with both his abilities, so that's why he's a pretty nice unit, right? He's also good if you want to run like a Leo team. So if you have a Leo, you can just bring like a very fast attack bar booster. Then your Brownie doesn't necessarily need very good speed, right? As long as the attack bar booster goes first, then you'll make your Brownie go next, and then your Brownie can remove will runes or whatnot. It is a bit more awkward if they have will and shield. If they have that, then you may not be able to remove all the will runes, but at least you still have a chance. So to me, I feel he's more of a defense unit than an offense unit, just because his the passive only removes one beneficial effect, right? So it's great if you know they only have one set of will, just like will runes, no shield runes. But if they have more than that, then he's gonna be worse than running, say, like a Soha or a Keela or something like that, right? But overall, he's a pretty good unit. He works pretty well in Guild Wars defense. The speed lead works well with things like Orion. So, because Orion by himself is not always going to be fast enough, right? People will just bring a Bernard and outspeed you. But if you put the speed lead in as well with the Orion, then he provides the extra speed that might make your Orion go first, right, over the opponent's Bernard, especially if he decides to risk it without a speed lead. Okay, and he provides like buff stripping and defense break on his second skill as well. He also provides despair procs, leaders, and a speed leader skill. So overall, his kit's very nice for like a defense unit, especially when people will probably notice that on units on defense tend to get a lot of procs and stuff like that. So that's why I feel he's good on defense. It's just like having those small chances to like really screw up an opponent's offense really adds up, right? Now, as for like how many you would farm, right? So he himself only needs 8 skill ups, right? 4 for each ability or skill. So that's not that many. There's like 9 total that you need. 1 for the Gemini himself, and then 8 to max skill him. You don't even necessarily need to max skill him. You really only need to max fly, right? The reason to max fly is the extra cooldown timer, right? Because you want to AoE and stun and armor break more often. But the first skill, like the multiplier, I believe is very bad. I don't think he does much damage, so it's not really like that worthwhile to max it if you can avoid it. But if your skills don't go into into the fly, then you just keep going until you max it. But if you're gonna go for really efficient leveling, feed 4 to evolve him, right? And after that, feed another 4 to evolve him from 5-star to 6-star. That will be the most efficient way, and you'll get the most out of your fodder, right? But if you don't mind, if you don't care about efficiency of fodder, then you may feed him one at a time. That's up to you. But yeah, I think for free-to-play players, you probably want to be more efficient with your fodder usage. So that's just a quick suggestion. Alright, so now let's discuss some of the other brownies. So assuming the Brownie HoH isn't too hard to farm, if you can farm multiple brownies, I feel it's worth putting in as much time into farming multiple copies as possible. Right, so let's go through some of the brownies that I have. Well, I have pretty much all of them except for the dark one, right? But we can talk about the skills and why would you want skill ups for them. So first off, Orion. Orion is probably the most commonly used Brownie Magician. Alright, pretty much actually every brownie in the family is really good, right, at some aspect. Maybe Draco may be the least used, but he's still pretty decent. Okay, But anyway, as for Orion, so the most important skill for him is Harmless Prank, right? It only requires 2 skill ups, so he's not too hard to max, yeah, but you can get unlucky and get none into the skill ups. It just depends on RNG. But you want to max this for sure, so you want to farm some. I would say he's the priority in terms of skill ups. He benefits the most out of all the brownies, right? Because he needs the turns, because the point of Orion is that he is there for like a long battle, right? Because the longer you fight, the more debuffs and stuff that he's gonna like put on the opponent, especially because of his the first skill, run. Because he's getting extra turns off this as well. So you probably see it quite often. Like a brownie will do something like run times 2. Oh, sorry, no, he'll probably Harmless Prank, and then if he doesn't violent proc, then next turn he'll just do 2 runs and then Harmless Prank you again. Right? That's all this like just adds up, and you find that if you don't have good cleansing, you'll fall behind, and the heal blocks will really like impact on how much healing you can do. But yeah, that's like the main reason to use him. He's also got Fly, similar to the Gemini, except that his one obviously doesn't have the passive, so he doesn't remove debuffs. But it's an armor breaker, so it's additional armor break. Only 1 turn, but if he does it on a unit that's just moved, then they'll have an armor break on a decent amount of time. And since he's also increasing attack bar with Harmless Prank, you should help boost your units up so that they'll be able to move before the opponent does. Especially if you put them on violent, so if you like flies and then violent procs and Harmless Pranks, that will help boost your attacker to move like while someone still has armor break on them. Right, and obviously run is the same as the other brownies. So these definitely, I would say this is the priority, the best brownie to build and to skill up as well. Alright, moving on, we also have the Fire Brownie, Draco. So this was actually a HoH last year, alright? Well, I believe it was last year. And the reason why I don't really need that many skill ups is because I farmed a lot of these guys, right? He's pretty good to get skill ups on, like especially his third skill. Only requires 1 though. But if you are building him, he's decent in like Guild Wars defense with certain units. Like a composition I've seen is Draco, Phil, Mars, and Chasun. That's not a bad composition. If you're running that, then you would want Whistle to be on. You want the reduced cooldown on that. Apart from that, he also has Fly. So he's like a defense breaker as well, and of course he can gain additional turns. And he's also a HP leader, which is a very nice universal leader skill. He's also a immunity buffer, so if you need an immunity buffer, he's pretty good for that. He's also decent on like offense because he'll give you immunity to protect you against like things that will cut in, right? And like let's say you're scared of like a Nemesis Veromos. If you run your Draco as your attack bar buffer, then he'll buff immunity on your attackers. And they don't need will runes for that, like for that purpose then, right, to protect them. So if you don't have the will runes to spare on things like say Lucians or whatever, then you can run a Draco on offense. He's still boosting attack bar by like the same amount as a Bernard would, but he doesn't have the speed buff, but instead he does give you a bit of protection of immunity. So you can, instead of like giving your Lucians will, you can give them better stats by using non-will runes. Since your will runes will probably be spread out, and also because will runes are necro drops, so you probably won't be farming them as much as the previous, like the giants and dragons runes, right? So yeah, that's Draco. And, I would say he's probably the worst brownie, but that's not to say he's bad. He's still like a very nice unit. Alright, just ignore my the stats I have on him. He's just holding spare runes at the moment. Alright, so now there's Aquila. Aquila is the wind brownie, and he's good on offense. Like he's more of an offense unit compared to Gemini. And the reason he's better on offense is because he's got a buff strip on his third skill, and it removes all beneficial effects, right? As opposed to Gemini, who only removes 1. And so this is better if you know you can't. Let's say, for example, you know you can't outspeed a Chloe. That's because you're running a will shield composition with no like Bernard or anything like that. Then Aquila is good in those sort of teams as your buff remover. And alternatively, he can also help you keep attack power on your team as well. So if you have Galleon, right? Galleon has a he only buffs attack power for 2 turns and is on, I believe, a 4-turn cooldown if I am not mistaken. Yeah, 4-turn cooldown. So there'll be 2 turns, right, where you won't have attack buff. So if that happens, then you can use the Aquila as like a backup to give you more uptime on attack power buff. So that's quite nice. And of course he's got run for additional turns, right? So he can help refresh this buff removal, fairly quickly. Also, another thing about this ability is that after he removes the beneficial effects, he can proc Despair. So one viable build is to give him Despair, and he'll do that for you. Unlike other units like Soha, I believe she does damage first before removing the buffs or something like that. The ordering is a bit different. But in the case of Aquila, he removes first and then does damage. So that way he can proc Despair after using this ability. Alright. As for skill ups, he's not that much of a priority. I would say Orion's the most highest priority, and then equal priority between Draco and Gemini, and then probably Aquila's probably last, because you don't really need the cooldown reduction, and it also requires a lot of skill ups. But if you have plenty of skill ups available, then you can do that. You can you can give him the skill ups, but it's not that necessary. Alright, now I don't have the dark brownie, but I'll just show you from here. Let's see. He's actually very similar to Aquila. Alright, he's almost exactly the same as far as skill set is concerned. He still has Fever Time, so that's the buff, and he's got Run of course. And the third ability is also a mass buff removal, but it has the added effect of for each beneficial effect that you remove, he'll put the enemy to sleep for that many turns, which is much better than Aquila's, because one, you don't have to rely on the Despair to get that CC going. And also that sleep is very powerful because it helps counter Nemesis users. Okay, so if you put them to sleep and have Nemesis, right? Because this will do damage. So if you bump them with the Nemesis rune and they cut in between, if they're asleep, then at least they're not gonna do any moves, right? And so that's why this guy is really good if you happen to have him. And I would say he's probably worth skilling up for this. He does do damage based on max HP, but I don't know how much damage exactly that is. So if you happen to have him, he's a really good buff remover. I would recommend building him. As for skill ups, it's not 100% necessary. Like, he'll still perform without skill ups, but if you happen to have him, you may as well give him skill ups, right? If you may as well farm the HoH for it. Worst case scenario, it will help give you better wall boss scores since you're getting the skill ups, right? He's also a crit lead, which is not bad for offense. So if you have no other damage based offensive leader skill, you can build your units around having this 19% crit lead, and therefore you don't have to have as much crit rate on your attackers, and therefore you can get more speed or a bit more attack power or crit damage instead. So yeah, that covers all the brownies. So definitely I would say if you are able to farm B3, I would do my best to farm as many as I can. I think people should farm as many as they can, and yeah, hopefully it's not too hard as well. as for our actual HOH team, right? Um, since this is the first time I'm like doing like a HOH video, I'll just quickly discuss like some units that you can use for the HOH, in like just a general sort of build, right? Because each HOH will be different depending on what the monster is. But there are some good generic units that will work in most HOH situations, alright? The first one being Phil Mars, right? Phil Mars is probably my favorite DPS unit for safe teams because first of all, he's got pretty decent HP, right? Base HP. And he's very easy to ruin because he's of his Elemental King, and also because he's even has crit leader, right? And he'll always hit every element for full damage, right? Because of Elemental King, and that's really good for HOH because the whole all the floors have like a different element of units, right? So each floor, each stage will have 2 elements, and then they change for each one. So having a universal attacker like Phil Mars is pretty good for like just like a standard general unit. All right. Next up is Verd. So not everyone will have Verd, he's not farmable or anything, but for people who do have Verd, it's pretty common to put him into the team because he's giving attack bar boost and speed lead. So he's just a good standard unit, but you probably want to make him a bit tankier than what I have. My one is a DPS build, so but the thing is HOH units is that they hit pretty hard, so you just make sure that your Verd is a bit like if you want to use him, make him a bit tankier. If you're using like a YOLO team with like all DPS, then it doesn't matter that much as long as your team is able to control the opposing units, stop them from moving, or like resetting them with things like Zyros or Varad or stuff like that. Then you could use a DPS Verd if you want. But for people who do have him, he's like a pretty standard unit to use. He's not necessary though. Like you can definitely do HOH without him. He doesn't need to be in a team. He's just nice to have. Another unit that is very commonly used for safe teams is Brian. Again, he's not a farmable unit. If you don't have Brian, then you can try to use your best reviver as like an insurance policy, so that because things are probably bound to die, right? Especially on a B3 run. So having a reviver will help you, recover, during the HOH, right? And he's also really good because he provides really good utility because he does AoE attack power debuff, right? That's really important because since everything's hitting pretty hard, if you can decrease that attack power, it just reduces the amount of damage you're taking. Because ideally you don't actually want to revive anyone, because if you're reviving someone, first off, they're going to be wasting turns on doing that and recovering to heal up and stuff, and you're not doing damage, right? Also, the more the units that die, the harder it is to recover, right? So ideally you don't want them to die too easily. One every now and then is okay, but if too many die, then it just slows down your run a lot. But you do want to make sure that you can get a 100% consistent run. So when I do that for HOH, I usually bring Brian to be the the safeguard. Alright, so Chasun is probably the most commonly used healer, but you don't have to use Chasun. You can also use Bella, or any of the free-to-play healers are fine as well. You could even use like the Wind Yeti if you happen to have him. You can use Colleen, is pretty decent too. Colleen is maybe a bit better because she provides attack power buff, right? So it's similar to how Chasun has it too. Having attack power buff is nice if you can't afford to run a Galleon in your team. So actually that's the other thing I should probably talk about is Galleon. If you can fit it into your team, then by all means do it. But if he's not tanky, he might die off quite often. But if you can fit him into your team, it will help speed up the run for sure. And another generic unit that people will use is Veramos. So Veramos, he's used a lot because first off, he stuns, right, which is quite nice for a bit of crowd control, but most importantly, he's a cleanser, right? He'll remove things like armor break and heal block. And this is going to be pretty important for brownies because a lot of them will have fly. So if you can remove, like if you can interrupt and remove the armor break, that will help reduce damage, like incoming damage. Also, there's going to be the Orions there, and my guess is they'll probably put Orion on the last boss stage, only because he's like probably one of the better brownies, right? Especially, you know, because like Comtours tend to make things pretty hard on the HOH stage, right? So they generally pick very well, like good combinations of units that work well together in each floor, and also like for the last stage, they generally pick the best of the HOH monster, like which elements are the best ones to put like there, you know, just to fuck with you. And also he's a HP leader, worst case scenario, right? So if you don't have a Verd, then you can use Varamos as your HP leader to make it a bit safer. He also provides like decent damage with his first skill and some dots as well, which helps as well. But yeah, he's generally a good all-round unit. So typically, my very like ultra safe, fairly generic team is Verd, Brian, Chasun, Fiormaz, and Veramos, right? Like the team's not particularly fast, but it's safe. It's usually about 4 minutes a run. If you don't have, you know, the rune quality or the glory point towers like I do, then you might be a bit slower, but at least you can complete it. You have 3 days, it's plenty of time. If you're only really like the really strong players trying to you know, speed through and farm as many copies as they can. If you are like not so progressed, then just go with a safe team. You still farm plenty in the 3-day period. Just to put it in perspective, I never used to run like full damage teams back, like especially in like the previous Brownie one. In the Draco one, I did like a very safe team, like the one I mentioned. I might have used 1 extra DPS instead of one of the units, but generally speaking, it was about the same, right? It's just like Filmaz is my main damage dealer, Veramos, Chasun, Brian, and Verd to make it safe. And I just farmed throughout the whole weekend, right? Or the 3 days. Obviously, I still slept and all that, but I did manage to farm over 20 copies of Draco. So yeah, even if you have 4 or 5 minute runs, you can still farm like plenty of copies as long as you're playing throughout the whole weekend. Okay. Alright, so that's it for me. Actually, this video took a lot longer than I thought it would, but I like to be, you know, very thorough with what I discussed with you guys. So if I missed anything, you know, feel free to ask me in comments as usual. And you know, good luck with the HOH, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.